Florida's Women in Energy Leadership Forum was launched to inform, inspire, motivate diverse talent to join the energy workforce by intentional recognition of current female energy leaders who contribute to growing Florida's economy and the purposeful sharing of their professional journeys. We are creating opportunity. Join me each week as we meet new leaders in energy and listen to their important roles in an industry that is vital to the country's future. Good morning. I'm Lila Jaber. Welcome to the Florida's Women in Energy Leadership Forum. This is our YouTube podcast opportunity here to talk to dynamic women in the energy industry. And this morning I'm with Lila Drescher and Mary Hauner-Davis, two great assets to the Burns and McDonnell all things environmental and engineering, architecture consulting firm. Just, I know you're headquartered in Kansas City, but you are national in your reputation and in your work, and you certainly do a lot in Florida. So I can't wait to drill down and help our viewers and listeners know more about the two of you and more about the company. And so thanks for being with us. Thanks for being unwavering sponsors of Florida's Women in Energy Leadership Forum. So, Mary, let's start with you. Tell us about you. Describe who you are, what you do for Burns and McDonnell, and then we'll go over to Laura and have her do the same.
Sounds great. Thanks for having us today, Lila. I think Laura and I are pretty excited to be here.
Much appreciated.
My name is Mary Hauner-Davis, and I have been at Burns and McDonnell for a little over 20 years now. Still loving it as much as I did the first day. Exciting adventures every day, we shall say. I'm currently a department manager for air quality and noise, as well as sustainability and carbon services. I have a great group of people that work under me and with me, and we have counterparts throughout the United States, as you said. I really specialize in air quality analysis for power projects, so on the energy side. So we work closely with a lot of our utility clients in navigating regulations as they come about, with clearly greenhouse gases being one of the big ones that we're working with today. So that's a little bit about me. And I also participate in a local organization, Air and Waste Management Association. I've been on the board for numerous years, and it's kind of an outreach program to educate a lot of the local people regarding air and waste regulations and happenings.
Great. Thank you, Mary. Mm-hmm. Laura, what about you?
Yeah, thank you so much for having us this morning. So my name is Lila Drescher, and I've been with Burns & McDonnell for 11 years. I have a bachelor's degree in civil engineering and environmental science from Kansas State University, and then went on for engineering management from the University of Kansas. And I'm now a project manager in our environmental group, and I focus on solid waste services, sustainability, other environmental engineering projects, remediation, and really all the encompassing engineering solutions to our clients' sustainability goal, helping them meet their sustainability goals from the water, soil, air emission side, waste. Really exciting job, a lot of diversity of work, and very happy to do it and happy to be here with you today.
Thank you, Laura. Well, let's get this started. So, Laura, as I listen to the description of your background and what you've done over the years with Burns and McDonnell, I bet, I'm going to take a guess that you never thought that all of those industries would converge into what we're talking about today in our time with the energy industry, green development and green energy. Years ago when I served on the PSC, when we talked about waste development, we certainly were discussing at the time, landfill gas, waste to energy, landfill gas to energy, but it's taken on a whole new meaning now. So, my first question to you relates to what are the trends you're seeing now as it relates to your work in particular with the energy industry?
Yeah, so I think we've talked about sustainability for many years, for 10 to 15 years, but there's really been a shift the last couple of years with sustainability and ESG. I think a lot of that is from we experienced a global pandemic, right? And that had everyone looking at the fact that organizations are greatly impacted not just by some of the financial risks, but by other factors, including environmental factors. And so people are having to look at what the impact is on their bottom line and their organization as climate change occurs. In 2020, for the first time, the World Economic Forum had the top 5 risks to our global economy being environmental factors. So it's kind of gone are the days of greenwashing and just talking about environmental impacts that an organization has. And now it's time to put our money where our mouths are and make some changes. And so we've seen a lot of interest in ESG and sustainability. And it's one thing to set goals, maybe arbitrary goals, but it's really helping our clients to implement those goals, develop plans for that implementation, which oftentimes are renewable energy projects, carbon sequestration projects. And then on the other side, you've got waste management, water quality, social or environmental justice projects, and then helping them track those metrics to get to the goals that they're wanting to meet. Sustainable siting, we've seen significant growth in all of these areas and don't see that changing or going away by any means. So it's really exciting for us, especially in a company where we have such a diverse set of employees and skills that we can use to serve our clients. And when those goals that they've set align with our own goals personally, from Mary and I's background, provides a lot of motivation for us as well.
And, Laura, over the years, I've been in rooms where advocates would, I should say critics, where critics would assume that the energy industry is embracing green energy and green energy policy because someone is making them do it, whether it's a federal requirement or a state requirement. But more and more, I think we can make the case that's just not correct. I think as an industry, we've discovered, one, of course, it's the right thing to do. But second, there's a business case for it. And then finally, I think my own observations include the fact that customers are demanding it too. I think there's more of an awareness on the part of residential customers. So my question to you, Mary, I'll throw this out to you, which is, what part of your work with the energy industry are you involved in making the business case for your energy clients?
Well, that's a great question. I should say, I've been here for 20 years and, my role in the work has changed significantly. When I started here, we started permitting, determining, control technologies for coal-fired power plants. Well, as you might have noticed, nobody's building a coal-fired power plant anymore, due not only to regulations, but also because it is the right thing to do. Coal-fired power plants do emit a lot of greenhouse gases. And they're with the technology that we're seeing today with wind and solar and a lot of these other renewable energy sources, they have come a long way since that time as well. We still need baseload power, so it's still important to have those types of energy sources until we get all of the renewable energy sources up to date. But with greenhouse gases becoming the endangerment finding in 2009, and then with greenhouse gases becoming a regulated pollutant, and the notice throughout the world that greenhouse gases does contribute to climate change, we've seen a significant change. So there's definitely a business case. A lot of it is due to investors on the ESG side also looking for your individual company's contribution to climate change and what your company is doing to reduce the impacts of climate change. And that seems to be extremely important right now, as Laura was saying. So we are seeing definitely a shift. And so the utilities and power companies also want to make that shift. I mean, honestly, if they don't, I mean, they will be left behind. And the Biden administration has new regulations coming out as well, so it's making it. They're enforcing it, but the utilities have already been on board with this, for 20 years and looking at the renewable energy sources.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We might have been calling it something else, right,
Right.
Laura?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And one of my most memorable projects was actually about 8 years ago, the construction of a 25-acre constructed wetland treatment system at a coal-fired power plant to treat their process water. And while it was a great, innovative, and exciting project, the best part was not only was it environmentally friendly, but saved them millions of dollars in operational costs. So it's not a new thing. And we have a lot of examples of where the sustainable options can meet your bottom line in multiple different ways.
Right.
And
We mentioned earlier the waste to energy initiatives that,
yes.
20 years ago. Now, of course, we're talking about capturing the methane, but
Right.
waste to energy is not a new concept. So we have our first audience question, and I was remiss in not asking this earlier. Someone in our listening group wants one of you to explain what ESG is. Who wants to take that on? Mary, do you want to take that on?
I would be happy to discuss that. Well, ESG stands for Environment, Social, and Corporate Governance Standards. So this is a fairly new term over the last, we'll say, maybe 5 years or so. And this is in relationship to what investors are requiring. So these are non-financial performance indicators that are being used by financial institutions for investment. So it's looking at risk on the environmental side, social side, and governance side. So there's a lot of programs out there related to transparency where investors are requesting and or requiring that companies put in these performance metrics, and they're evaluated on those performance metrics. So they're evaluated on environment as in water use, carbon emissions, as well as waste, and then reduction in all of those areas and what their contribution is to the overall, climate change of the world. So this is becoming very important, not only to, I think you mentioned this, Lila, earlier, to just people, to everybody. This is becoming important to everybody. Therefore, the investment firms see this as important as well, and this can be a significant risk. The social side of it is obtaining not only employee input and happiness, at their jobs for the company, but as well as a community. So we are seeing a much bigger push in the social realm of things. Environmental justice is also related to this, and is a big piece of this social impact as well. And then the corporate governance side is the board members, diversity, where they're spending their money, and transparency with the board and the governance, the people that are governing the company. So all of these are becoming extremely important to investors. So the companies, Laura and I get a lot of questions. Hey, what do we need to do to meet ESG goals? How do we set goals? Where are we at? How do we know what our baseline is? So we're seeing a lot of those questions from our clients, and we're helping them navigate kind of those rules and what the investors are looking for. How can we increase our score, our carbon disclosure project score, and those types of questions. So it's all related, and it's a big, vast world that's been growing, I would say, over the last 10, maybe even 20 years. But now it's kind of come to a crux, and it's really important that all companies out there are seeing the push to be transparent in these areas.
Mary, I have to tell you, that was one of the best explanations I've ever heard.
Oh, thank you.
Just a wonderful response. And a couple of things for the viewers who are interested in learning more about ESG. Publicly traded companies are putting their ESG reports or their sustainability reports on their websites. And then you often see equity, diversity, and inclusion policies and statements in the S part of that equation, right? Something you said. So going back to Burns and McDonnell, I mean, I was not kidding when I said you are an all-purpose engineering firm. So what you just described about companies bringing you in to help them in the analysis part of that and improving on their metrics That's part of your consulting arm, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
Correct.
And the great piece about Burns and McDonnell is in the introduction, we have 8,000 engineers, scientists, architects, people that can help with solutions in all of these areas. And that's why it's just exciting, I think, to be at Burns and McDonnell right now too, because we have all of these people with all these ideas and innovation that can help solve some of these issues related to ESG and goals that our clients have set or need to set.
Laura,
And we can truly
go ahead, Laura.
we can
please.
truly help them come from, asking the questions of should we have goals, who's going to require goals, and help them set those goals, to help them develop a plan of how they're going to get to develop their baseline of where they're at, set those goals, an implementation plan, help them achieve those using some innovative solutions, track their progress, because it's very important to understand where you are in the process. So it's really an all-encompassing set of services that we can provide, from the consulting side all the way through permitting, design, implementation, and tracking of a company's ESG goals.
So Laura, at what point do you get brought into a project? Is it, at the point where the project is a twinkle in the CEO's eyes, or is it after site selection? What's the ideal point for when you are brought in?
Mary and I are often involved early on in the process. We do have a lot of clients, especially even on the utilities side, where goals have been set at a corporate level and then they're passed down to a facility, or even on the industrial side or manufacturing side, it may be passed down to a plant. And you're looking at that plant or at that location, that facility, at how to implement those goals. And so we can bring our team in, help evaluate options to get them to those goals that have been set corporately, maybe net zero goals on emissions or water or waste, and then help them with implementation and tracking to get there. So as early on as possible, we'd love to be involved and help our clients with those solutions. But anytime in the process, we're happy to help our clients just to brainstorm and bring in the right parties that we have here at the company.
We've got another question from the audience. Let me just go ahead and answer that, and we'll get back to learning more about Burns and McDonnell. The question is registration still open for the forum? And yes, you can still register at the forum at flwomenenergy.com. The forum is October 27th through the 29th. Early bird registration rates end next week. So please go ahead and register. And yes, we are sold out of the first group of rooms at the JW Marriott, but we have engaged the second hotel, the Ritz. Those rooms are still available, and it's right next door. There's a walkway that gets you from one hotel to the next hotel. So I hope that you will join us, and you'll get to meet the Burns and McDonnell team in person, as well as all of the other phenomenal women and men from these companies. Thank you to all of our sponsors. FP&L and Duke Energy are the title sponsors, and our presenting sponsor is the Gunster Law Firm. We're just happy to have all of you with us. One of the things I've noticed about Burns and McDonnell, and I, as a former PSC commissioner, and in my work after my service with companies that are entering the state of Florida and learning more about state government, I have to say that my path really didn't cross with Burns and McDonnell until the forum. And I have firsthand observed your level of engagement with one another. You are so supportive of one another. You have a dynamic group of female professionals that pushes one another, endorses one another. It really is a testament to your teamwork. And again, this goes back to the S part of ESG, but it comes naturally to your team. I mean, Tori Held was one of the first people I met at Burns and McDonnell, and she really has done a phenomenal job endorsing each of you and others. And I have to believe that's a culture at the company. Obviously, it comes naturally to some people, but I have to believe it's enforced with a corporate culture. Am I right about that? Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
It really is. It really is our culture, and I think it's really unique to Burns and McDonnell. Um, I uh, I mean, one of my favorite parts about coming to work every day is the teamwork. I really enjoy and thrive in a teamwork environment, and that's why I'm still here after 20 years. And it's not just like teaming, working with Laura and people, in the environmental division, but we work with people throughout all the other global practices, and it's reciprocated. Somebody calls me and has a question. Hey, we really need to navigate this greenhouse gas regulation. Can you help us? Of course, I'm going to. We're all in it together, and I think a lot of that culture is backed by our ESOP. So we are ESOP company. So everybody receives company stock. We're all in it together. We're all employee owners. And I think that's probably a big reason why there's so much teamwork. But we are really productive, I think, of our culture here too. So we really thrive on teamwork, being part of a team. We want everybody else to be successful. And that's even, more so, I would say, for the women and diverse communities here. We really encourage each other. We have professional organizations for networking as well for women, which I think helps encourage that even more so. It's just, I just think it's really unique to Burns and McDonnell for many reasons. Laura, how about you?
Yeah, I completely agree that employee ownership and just when someone else is successful, we're all successful. It also naturally promotes a lot of mentorship, not just our formal mentorship program that's available, but just informal relationships with each other and helping each other grow, because I know that there have been people that have invested in me in my career and that my success benefits them and I do the same for others in my group. So it really is a culture that I think is different than some other organizations where we're all in this together, one Burns and McDonnell, and it's a really exciting opportunity for us to do, big and small projects together and watch each other succeed.
Yeah, you literally own the company. You have ownership in
Literally.
the
Yes,
company
yes,
and in
Yes.
the relationship. It is unique. That
yeah.
is
Yes.
unique. It's not obviously not unique in law firms and the like, but in terms of engineering and other specialty areas, it's quite unique, isn't it? So one person succeeds, everyone succeeds. Your
Right.
your success is everyone's success. And of course, the same would be true if there was failure, but thankfully, we're not going to talk about that. In terms of, you mentioned the official mentorship programs. So we often get the question from our viewers: do you have internships? How does a college student make himself available to Burns and McDonnell?
Most definitely. We have a really robust internship program. We have over 300 interns every summer from all across the company, over 40 locations, over 120 majors that participate in this internship program, anything from environmental, electrical engineering, HR, marketing, accounting. And it's a really neat program to be ingrained in the company, to learn about our culture, to get exposure to all the different attributes and the different types of work that we do. We have a really high success rate for those those interns coming on as employee owners after college. So we're very proud of that program. We had 2 interns in our group this summer that did some amazing work and bring diversity to our group and some innovation that we wouldn't have otherwise. So we're very grateful to them and excited for them to come back next year because we have plenty of work for them to do.
Yeah, I want to go back and become an intern at Burns and McDonnell. I would really like to do that. I have to tell you, I can personally attest to your interns getting jobs at Burns and McDonnell after college because I follow you on social media. And I've seen the college students say, "I'm so excited to announce that I'll be joining Burns and McDonnell this summer or this year." It's wonderful because you can see their enthusiasm in joining your company as well.
As Laura said, I mean, it's just as exciting for us as managers because we get to, have these people for the summer and then, hopefully make them a job offer and they
Right.
come back next year. And it's just really exciting for everybody. And they do bring this innovation. So I'm always looking for new grads and interns that maybe have some insight into newer technologies and things. I mean, I've been here for 20 years and we are engineering and we're on the cutting edge, but still they still have all of these new ideas and fresh ideas and things that they've thought of either from some professors sparked their interest in something,
Mhm.
but it's just wonderful. And I think our interns here have a great time. They all get together. They do fun things like they go to a baseball game together. So that builds that camaraderie there, and we're already kind of starting that culture. So they kind of all know each other and within the other global practices as well.
That's great. That's great. So yes, we encourage questions. Please post your questions or your comments. If you're watching us on Facebook, you can enter those questions right there in the chat box. So Mary and Laura, I want to go back to something we've touched on briefly, environmental justice. Thankfully, we're all speaking and addressing that more than we all did in the past, or certainly we're being more succinct in how we're describing location, the importance of location as part of site selection, or, in the case of regulated utilities, discussing affordability when we talk about rate impact. So, environmental justice, what part of project development do you impact, your work in terms of commenting and impacting where a project will be as it relates to environmental justice?
Well, we do, I think Laura mentioned this earlier, we do a lot of siting studies for any new type of facility. And one of our metrics that we evaluate is for environmental justice. Is it an environmental justice area? There are a lot of wonderful tools that the EPA has actually developed for identifying those areas now. I mean, we've been performing environmental justice analyses for our sites for numerous years in the past. It's also always been a big part of NEPA, National Environmental Protection Act.
Mhm.
So we have been evaluating that for those siting selections as well as environmental assessments and EISs. However, the EPA, this is one of EPA and Biden administration's um, things that they're working on during this administration, and it's come to the forefront. So they have
But Mary,
developed.
what does that mean, Mary, in terms of what is it you would assess? I think you're referring
Okay,
to EPA,
right.
actually, and it was Burns that taught me this and made me aware personally of the EJ toolkit that
Yes,
the EPA puts forward.
yes.
And actually, and I want to again give you a shout out. We have at the forum a whole morning dedicated to EPA and environmental justice, and that's a direct result of Burns and McDonnell's leadership. That was
Mhm.
your
Oh,
idea
great.
that inspired that part of the program. So just you really are phenomenal in leading those conversations. So thank you for that, and want to give credit where credit is due.
Great, thank you. So yes, so the analysis and the EJ screen tool that you were referencing, it evaluates the population around an area or within an area, and they're looking for disadvantaged areas. So race, economics, and many other indicators, which would make it fall under economic justice, or I'm sorry, environmental justice area. So there is a disproportionate amount of pollution in some of those areas, and they are trying to remove that from these disadvantaged areas. So it's even more important to not build or not create more pollution in the areas that are disadvantaged. So another thing that the EPA and this administration is looking at is existing facilities that happen to be in EJ areas. So that's becoming a significant area. If you are not meeting your permit limits and you are polluting more than you're limited to, that's going to be a significant issue and additional fines if you are in an EJ area. So that's become a a real important issue in the past couple of years, but it's definitely a push in this Biden administration as well.
It's wonderful. So, Laura, I'm going to switch gears just a little bit. For our viewers and listeners, you've seen a great example in both Laura and Mary on their engineering background, how knowledgeable they are in environmental engineering, how much work they do with the industry. More and more, Laura, we hear that there aren't enough women that are pursuing STEM related careers. And obviously the two of you are phenomenal examples of engineering degrees. You both have pursued your master's degrees in some form of engineering, civil engineering or environmental engineering. If it's true, if we accept as a fact that there aren't enough women pursuing engineering degrees or any sort of STEM related career, science, technology, environment, math, um, how do we increase those numbers?
Yeah, so at Burns and McDonnell, we do a lot of encouragement of STEM, women in STEM from even a young age all the way through when you're here at Burns and McDonnell. So one of the success stories, one of my colleagues in my department, she came in as a shadow to me 8 years ago when she was a senior in high school, freshman in college, tried to figure out what she wanted to do. We sat down and kind of talked about what I do on a day-to-day basis, some of my projects. She ended up choosing environmental engineering, interning here, and she's been full-time here for the last 3 years and is a stellar employee owner, and just I see such an amazing future for her. I'm so excited. So we do a lot of work even from the beginning to educate and encourage women in engineering. I know myself, I'm not a super patient person. And so sometimes it can be frustrating to not see as many women in high leadership positions. But I have to realize that 20 years ago, not as many women were coming out of college programs in engineering. And it takes some time to gain that knowledge and experience for some of those levels of leadership. And very excited about NASDAQ's new diversity rule requiring a female on 3,500 publicly traded boards. That's fantastic. You know, I'm lucky that we've got some examples here at Burns and McDonnell, including Mary, to look to of women in leadership positions. And I do think that we really do promote opportunities for females here in professional development and in leadership positions. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here because that's what I'm interested in. And I'm very grateful for the opportunities I've been given thus far.
Thank you, Laura. And we do have, let me ask our producer to put up, we did get a question on female leadership. So Mary, let me pose it to you. Do you still find inequalities in female leadership in the industry? How can we collectively work to change the culture around women in C-level positions? Let me just add to that. Laura is absolutely right. We are seeing the requirements at the corporate board table to have more women at the table. But that came with criticism, right? That you shouldn't have to mandate that.
Mm-hmm.
It is what it is. We've had to mandate it, and it has increased the numbers. But what do we do besides that to encourage more leadership, diverse leadership? And not necessarily the board table, but CEOs, directors, presidents.
I think something that maybe have been missing, or something that I've learned over 20 years, is you need to make it known, what your goals are. So if you think that you should be the next CEO or have goals of doing that, we as women especially need to make that known. And finding that mentor who is your cheerleader is extremely important to help push you up. And I think the atmosphere is right now. So I think that it's going to happen because of some of the things you just mentioned, Lila and Laura talked about also. I think the atmosphere is right, that it's going to organically happen, but we need to be there, especially as women, to make sure that it continues and that movement does keep moving forward. So as Laura said, even talking to the women in high school, that are interested in STEM, and encouraging them. You love math and you love science. Have you thought about engineering? I mean, you should look at this and look at all of the different categories of engineering or of biology or the other things that you could do with your interest. So I think encouraging that even more so, and from the bottom up, I think it's just going to probably organically happen with everything that's happening in the world right now.
I think, if I might just add one thing to both of your great answers, we each have a role to play, right? It's
Yep.
being someone else's champion, and doing it without being selfish, just watching others grow and promoting. Yes, Sarah says you need to make that known what your goals are. I love that advice. That's so true, because over time we've all learned that it's hard for women to say, this is what I aspire to do. There's a book I'd recommend to both of you if you've not read it already, Unapologetically Ambitious. And it's okay to say that, and it's not a bad thing.
Yep.
We've watched that change over time for women. It's all about being clear with regard to what your goals are, working toward those goals, communicating it to the people that can make the decisions,
Right.
and obviously doing it in a way that's thoughtful and humble. But we don't say to our male counterparts, uh, make it known in a way that's thoughtful and humble. It's let us know what it is that
Yep.
you think you can do, and why you want to do it. What do you bring to the table? No, that's true for women too. I started the Florida's Women in Energy Leadership Forum for a couple of reasons. One, I thought that if we could bring awareness to the many different careers in the energy industry, then we can expose that student's mind to the opportunity. The second thing was, if I brought women like you to the table to talk about what you do and how you do it and how long you've been doing it, then the next Mary that's in the audience, who's a second or third year college student, could see herself in Mary and being motivated in that regard. So I say this to our viewers and audience: if you know of a second, third, fourth year college student that might not be sure what she wants to do, or you think is ripe for the energy industry, I sponsor those students. The forum sponsors the students. They're only responsible for their travel and their hotel, but their registration is waived. So we can accommodate another 10 students. I hope anyone listening that either has a college student in their own family or is aware of someone that needs an opportunity, please bring them to our attention. You can reach me at Lila Jaber at lilajaber.com. So, Mary and Laura, this is not my favorite question, but we always get asked this question, and until we can further educate on this question without having to discuss it, we're going to go ahead and continue to repeat it. We have families. We go home, thankfully, to our families. Some of us have children. Yesterday for me was a classic example of making a decision that made my 15-year-old son, the priority, and that's the work-life balance, right? Question. So I'll ask each of you, what's your advice on maintaining work-life balance?
Yeah, so this is a question that is very challenging for me. I've always struggled with it, and I always will. But it is, everyone has their own answer. And I would say the first thing is finding something, aligning your work with what you're passionate about. When I first started here, one of our co-founders, Robert E. McDonnell, in 1927, had a quote that, "What can be more romantic and thrilling than to be engaged in a profession that saves human lives and adds to the health and prosperity of your own community?" And it sounds corny, and I couldn't believe that someone would think that trash and soil remediation was romantic, but it really is. It does speak to what we do and how passionate and what purpose we get from our work. So finding something that you enjoy is critical, I think, for a work-life balance. And then I've realized that we all have our priorities, and I love my job. I'm very dedicated to my job, but finding a work-life balance means that I need to prioritize. I need to understand my strengths and weaknesses very well and my limitations, and I need to know who and when to ask for help. Because my coworkers, my clients, my son, they all demand the best of me. And I can't have the best of me. I can't provide them the best of me without a little bit of self-care.
Right.
And sometimes that's sneaking out over lunch to do a workout. And sometimes it's, drinks and sushi with girlfriends every once in a while. But that's what's going to make me the most efficient. I thrive on a little bit of chaos, but single working mom in the industry, there's a lot of it. So I've really learned the value of self-care and found a great support system around me, and a job that I'm really passionate about. And that gives you a lot of motivation to keep going.
Absolutely. And you're productive. Don't you think your family sees that happiness and the productivity? And, I have
100%.
4 children, and my first 2 used to say, Mom, you can't, don't stay home. Please don't stay home. So,
Agreed.
and we were, yeah, exactly. We were fine with that.
Yeah. 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 It's such a weird question to me, because it's such a different answer for everybody and what is the right work-life balance. And you just make the decisions that you need to make and they're going to work out. Is I guess how I feel, if I have a work meeting and I miss a soccer game, that might be okay for me, but the next one I'm going to make sure I go it to. So I just kind of plan my things out to make sure that I don't feel like I'm neglecting anything. It's always everybody, even dads, if you want to say that, feel guilty about things.
Absolutely.
Everybody's going to feel guilty about certain things, about missing something at work or missing something with your kids or whatever it might be, or missing sushi with the girlfriends. That's probably one I'd really miss. But there's a lot of things out there that you just make those decisions and you're just doing the best that you can, and that's all you can do.
That's all you can do.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I heard an interview not very long ago, 2-3 months ago, and this speaker talked about it as work-life integration. And I thought, absolutely, that's certainly in the last 3 years, that's been how I describe, my teenagers as it relates to my work.
Yeah.
For the viewers and the listeners, before we were on the show, I was having technical difficulty, and I shared with our guests and our producer, well, that's because my 17-year-old isn't here this morning to get us set up. And if that's not an example of work-life integration, I don't know what is. And I can't wait for her to be out of school this afternoon so I could tell her that I just can't do this without her. and I'm not going to hear the end of it, I'm sure. So tell me, ladies, what has been your greatest work accomplishment so far? And hopefully many more to come. But what's been your greatest accomplishment so far?
Well,
go ahead.
Okay. I was going to say, I thought about this for a while and I think about it often, and I couldn't point to just like one project, but my biggest accomplishment is that I feel good about the work that I do with my clients. I feel like it's really an asset to their projects to have somebody navigate the regulations or how solving their, coming up with solutions to meet their goals, their carbon reduction goals, whatever it might be. It's just, I feel like it's a win every time I can make my clients successful, honestly, because I feel like an important part and I'm making a difference. So I can't even point to one particular project.
That's great. That's great. Laura?
Yeah, I think to tag on to what Mary said, it's really that when our clients' goals align with our personal passion. And the big projects are really exciting and fun to work on. But I also have a lot of opportunity to work with local and state governments and work with small communities that are setting diversion goals and, negotiating recycling processing agreements or evaluating whether they can have a curbside recycling program or remediating residential yards in communities that are experiencing some socioeconomic issues. So there's that personal touch in everything that we do that's really great, and provides a lot of purpose to work with these organizations and have that fulfillment in aligning our goals.
It strikes me that you both are in a type of profession where you can see the fruit of your effort. And
Yes,
that's always professionally fulfilling, you know?
Mhm.
So
most definitely.
congratulations to both of you and to Burns and McDonnell for recognizing what a terrific resource you both are. Let me close with this question I ask all of our interviewees. So, as you know, as I've mentioned before, with the Florida's Women in Energy Leadership Forum, we do try to inspire the students and also those in the industry that might be thinking a change is ripe in their career. So, my question to you, what advice would you give? Let's focus on the college students. What advice would you give that second year college student? Not sure what she wants to do quite yet, but has listened to this interview and is willing to pursue a career in energy. Mary.
I'd say there's always room to change. You know, everybody is it may be indecisive about what they want to do, but you know, as long as you've done your investigation into what type of work you want to do and where you maybe want to end up, I think that's important. But it's never too late to change. If you get into something and you decide, I don't really like to do this. I mean, at Burns and McDonnell, we have these options all the time. If you're a civil engineer and you're, let's say, in the transportation group, but you don't really like that type of work, you decide that maybe that's not really where your passion is, but you talk to people in the environmental group and you say, that's where I want to be. There's always room for change. So, you know, make sure that you're informed, you know, and you've done your research, maybe found a mentor or shadowed somebody, whatever that is, and you make that decision. Because I was kind of indecisive as to what I wanted to do. Laura's probably maybe a little bit the same way. And then luckily, you know, I stepped into really what I wanted to do, and I found I love it. But if that's not the case, you can always change. You know, don't put
Yeah.
all this pressure on yourself.
Exactly. Be flexible. But Mary, I
Mhm.
want to really emphasize something else you said, shadowing.
Yes.
More and more people are embracing the idea of apprenticeships or a shadow
Mhm.
for a day. And college students should not be shy about asking family friend, writing a letter to someone, may I shadow you this week? It's really, really very effective. And you don't know unless you ask.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. And
Right.
I don't know anybody who would say no to
No,
that.
I don't
If
either.
they said, can I shadow you? Of course you can.
Yeah, absolutely. Laura, what about you?
Yeah, I think along with what she said, we've talked about this a lot, but just finding something you're passionate about, sometimes that takes a while to find. I didn't realize in college that I would be hanging out at landfills as much as I do, but I really enjoy my job and I'm very grateful for that. I would say, as thinking about this, and you kind of stole my thunder here, Lila, when you talked about that book about on unapologetically ambitious. I would say to be my best advice is to be unapologetically yourself.
Yeah.
I have wasted a lot of time thinking about and debating how my colleagues or my clients or my supervisors might perceive me as being a woman in the industry. And it's not worth your time. I think there's some women's training that focuses on trying to teach us to perform more like a man to be successful in the industry. And I believe that wholeheartedly, our diversity is what makes us successful. We talk about, bringing women into boardrooms. That diversity is what helps our organizations be more successful. And that sincerity of yourself, self-awareness, always working on yourself, but being true to yourself is how you create these really strong and authentic relationships where you gain respect of your coworkers and your clients. And in the end, that's really what's going to make you have a fulfilling career is that purpose and passion and the respect of those in the industry. So just to be unapologetically yourself and comfortable with who you are, I think is really important and takes a long time to get to. I'll continue to work on it forever.
It's always a
Um,
work in progress.
Yeah.
of
Absolutely.
course.
Yeah.
Absolutely. As it should be. As it
Mhm.
should
Yeah.
be. Well, ladies, you're rock stars. You're rock stars. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for your leadership in your industry. Thank you for your leadership in promoting women in energy and promoting women in engineering and by leading by example. Thank you. Thank you for being with us. I look forward to meeting you in person at the forum, October 27th through the 29th. For those that haven't registered, please don't forget flwomenenergy.com. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Laura. And I'll see you soon.
Thank you so
Lila.
much.